I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just to let you know the format of the talk, this is a two-part talk. The first part is going to be basically me telling you what to do in the first half. And then the second half, we're going to be actually creating icons with Photoshop. So the next part is a lot more hands-on. Hopefully, at least half of you have Photoshop, so we can do some pairing with not everybody has it. And how many of you came here because they saw my tweet? All right. So for those of you who don't know what that the tweet is about, let me just test this. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. What is my favorite color?
Green.
Purple. No. Purple. Who said purple? All right, you get a cookie.
Wow.
So I want people to participate and ask and answer questions. All right? Cookies. That's what the tweet was about. Right after I baked them last night, I posted on Twitter, so I thought that may be one reason why people are here, besides learning how to make beautiful Android. So what I'm going to go through is some resources as developers for you to make your app look beautiful. I am a developer by training. I love beautiful things, but alas, I cannot draw. And how many of you here are developers? Oh, almost everybody. How many of you are designers? How many of you can draw? Okay, I may be coming to you and learning more tricks afterwards, but what I'm going to go through is things that you can do without knowing how to draw. These are the things that I use to make my apps look beautiful, and I'm going to go through one by one. The first thing is the XML drawable. So since so many of you raised your hand, and we are at the Android conference, I assume you have done Android programming and have used XML files in Android, right? That's how you specify layout and whatnot. So how many of you have done shape drawables? So essentially what shape drawable allows you is, instead of supplying a PNG file for either the graphic or the background, you can give it an XML file that will programmatically tell the system what to do. You can make a rectangle, oval, line, ring, so the four shapes that Android gives you. And to use that, you define your shape by saying that, okay, this is a shape, and it's a rectangle, and the line that says solid Android color. What do you think that does?
Gives it color.
I'm guessing it just draws a solid rectangle.
Solid rectangle, what color rectangle?
Or that would be...
Aha, we mean RGB, all right, red. I don't know who said red. You get a cookie. But I'm not going to actually hand it out now. You can come afterwards, because otherwise it will be very destructive if I'm just like keep walking back and forth. So yeah, it gives you a solid rectangle. And the way you put that is you put it in, actually I think I made a mistake. So it's actually red/drawable / rectangle. That's how Android knows that is something that it wants you to draw. And then afterwards, normally when you do like Android background or source on an image view, you put drawable / whatever your PNG file name is. So this time you're just giving it the XML file. And it looks like this. Like we said, it's going to be a rectangle. And the size, the dimension of this rectangle is actually just determined by your view size. So the rectangle itself, it doesn't know how big it is. It's just going to take as much space as it needs. Because the system knows it just needs to paint a solid red color, so it doesn't really matter how big it is. So besides not needing to use how to use Photoshop, this is a great technique to be able to have scalable images, because they are specified programmatically. And solid red is a little bit boring, so we are going to change it. Now, I'm going to add a gradient from what color? Green to blue. All right. And so now it looks way more beautiful already, right? Than the solid red. And with gradient, there's also some more parameters you can specify. I can give it an angle. So this time I'm going to change it so that the spread, instead of the other one was a sideways spread, so now the gradient goes top down. And this is great, like I said earlier, because you are just telling Android that the top color is green, the bottom color is blue. Even if you're taking the whole screen, it knows like how much you need to stretch it, rather than you create a solid, well not solid, but a static PNG, then the stretching may make it look ugly. So this is infinitely scalable. And with that, there's also some other perimeters. Have anyone done this before? Corner? What does it do?
Round corners.
Round corners, exactly. So the radius kind of give it away. So you're just telling Android that give me a rectangle, but make the corners round. Now this looks suspiciously like something. A button, yeah. All right. So with that, you can make beautiful buttons instead of just the stock buttons. And like I said, you don't need to know how to draw. You're just spelling everything out in XML, right? And what about button that's specific is that when you click on them, they should change state. Well, okay, if you are good Android developers, I've seen many buttons that don't change state, and then we don't know, right? Like people will be clicking on this, like, is anything happening? So give them some feedback, right? So with the same technique, you can specify buttons of different colors, and then how are you going to tell Android to change state when it gets pressed or focused? Do you guys know the difference between pressed and focused? Who's brave enough or want a cookie enough to tell them?
The focus is if you tap the control through some other type mechanism. Press is when you actually are touching and pressing.
Okay, so like the way usually focus manifests itself is like if you have like D-pad, right? Like you have like the arrow keys, then it gets focused, but it's not actually happening yet. It's just like, ooh, this is the thing that got selected. So now, if we want to tell Android to do something different, we can, and I don't know if you notice, I'm very proud of this. We are not in Java yet. I'm doing everything in XML, right? So what you can specify is, again, in the drawable directory, you can make a selector. So the way this works is that you're telling Android, if the item is pressed, use this drawable. If it's focused, use this one. And then this is just the default. So the way, if you can translate in your head in the if loop, is literally what I said. If this, then this. Right? Else, do this. So the last case is very important as a catch statement. So if none of your state matches, it's still displaying something, which is why there's no parameters, right? It's just like, oh, well, if nothing else matches, just get the normal one. And each of these individual are, once again, XMLs. So we have already seen this. You have a specifying gradient with a radius. And again, refresh your memory, that's how it looks like. So this is great, right? We have a button that changes color. But what's not great is that the contrast here with the text, once I give it a light color, it's kind of not very readable anymore. Of course, I can change it to black, but then you may have something that then this version will not be readable. What to do? Well, fortunately, the same trick works for text as well. So once again, you're specifying as a selector, when it's pressed, do something. But instead of referring to a drawable, you're giving it just a text color. So the Android color. And again, give it different states. So in this case, when the button is pressed, the text is going to turn, what color? Black, right. And then the rest is just white. I mean, it's just the way to match my background color. And then to use it, again, you are going to refer to the drawable, right? And then normally when you use a text color like that, it's just a value, right? You do hash, F00 if you want it red. But then you can refer it to a resource, and then that way it's going to react to the state. And ta-da! We have a black text, and these guys remain white. So that's how we can use XML so that it's a little bit responsive and also, well, beautiful. And next I'm going to show you another technique to make your app beautiful, which is with backgrounds. And specifically, one technique that I find very useful is a tiling background. So say I have something that I want to have a wooden background. Instead of having a single back image that gets stretched in whatever way it is and look ugly, I'm just going to make a single tile and then tile it. When we think of tiling, I think most of us think of this pattern, right? Like you have the same shape, and then you repeat one after another. Android provides two other modes. One is clamp. What it means is that just repeat the color on the edge. It's a little bit odd to use it as a tiling background, but there are other uses. I'll show you a bit later. But what I really like is mirror. So what mirror does is that it takes your image and then it flip it on the edge. So every time you use tile, it's actually flipping over the edge that's touching. So it gives you this effect that you don't have any seams along your background, right? Because if you're using this one, then you have to get into Photoshop and make sure that everything will be on the edge will be continuous. So this, you can pretty much give it any odd image, and then it will look seamless. And to illustrate, with the wood tile I showed you earlier, these are the 3 effects. Which one do you think looks more natural? 1, 2, or 3? 3? Yeah? So 3 is mirror. Like this is tiling. Right? So tiling, you can see, like you can clearly tell where one tile starts and one tile ends. Yeah, not professional. And yeah, clam just looks silly. So how do we do this? Again, same technique. When you want to use it as a background, so you refer to your file in the drawable folder. But this time, instead of a shape, we're going to specify something called a bitmap. And what it does is that it will know with the source parameter where to load your tile. I just call it tile, which means tile.png in this case. And then you can specify the tile mode. Again, clamp, repeat, or mirror. And then that's it. It's going to put your tile into that nice mirroring mode. And this is just my little illustration to show you where the borders are, because it was so seamless that we couldn't see it earlier. But you can see, right, that the mirroring was happening over the edge, and that's how you get this line, which you can see the wood grain going on continuously. So that's some techniques you can use for shapes and images. And now I'm going to move on to text, because we know a lot of our apps have words on it, right? Text shadow. This is actually a pretty simple technique that can make your text look way more professional, which is you're just specifying a shadow so that, in this case, I'm using it to make it look a little bit 3D. I mean, you can also literally use it like a shadow and it's below the text. And the way I specify that is basically all the parameters that has the prefix shadow in it. We have the shadow color. In my case, I chose white. And then the dx and dy tells you how much displacement the shadow is from the original text. And then the radius is just the size of the shadow. This, you can actually get really creative with this. So like I said, what I was doing was just making it look like 3D. And a lot of the times, it just give you that little touch to make it look more professional. And another thing you can do is, I don't know if you can tell already, but I love gradients. Gradients is your best friend. If you don't know what to do to make your app look beautiful, add gradients. Subtle gradients. Well, okay, this one is way over the top, but this is to show. But if you like have a light gray over to a dark gray in the background, like very subtle, people, like if you ask people, like, why does it look professional? They can't tell you, but it's the gradients. So you, not only that you can use gradients for your background, but you can also use it in your text. And now, I'm sorry, we have to use Java. This is the part where you actually have to specify a shader for your text, which you can right now do it in Java. So a little bit explanation what's happening here. You're defining a linear gradient, which actually corresponds to the XML gradient that we saw earlier on. But you cannot apply an XML gradient by XML to a text view. So what this is the size of the gradient. What I'm telling it is it's a linear gradient moving from 0, 0 to 0, which is x, and y, which is the size, the height of the text view itself. So I'm giving it the size, and what it's going to do is start with red and in blue, and now the clamp becomes interesting. Because what happened is that, say I didn't specify the height, right? If I say it's always 20 pixels or something of that kind, then if your text is actually taller than 20, what it will do, it will move from red to blue and then fill the rest with blue. So in this case, it actually makes sense, right? For the tiling background thing, why would you want to continue the pixel at the border like that? But for text, it could make sense. So once you specify the shader, then you can go ahead and call this line, which tells the text view that when you are writing out your text, use this shader. And by the way, if you're frantically taking notes, The slides are online. I mean, it's online as we speak. It's bit.ly/beautiful Android. It's going to show up again in the next slide, just so that we can focus. But feel free to take notes. I'm not offended or anything. Just in case you're one of those people that was worried that this thing is going to go away. So now we're going to get something even more fun with this. So there are other parameters we can tweak with the shader. What I did is I go ahead and grab, again, the red blue, make a mirror mode, and I tilted the linear gradient by 45 degrees. And so the shader takes a matrix. Matrix is a very powerful way to do transformations, and rotate is just one of it. You can do all kinds of skew and whatnot. So I'm going to rotate by 45 degrees, and again, apply the shader. And voila! So you see what happened here? So I start with red, and then it shades it by 45 degrees to blue, and of course go through my favorite color, purple, in the middle. And then it comes back to purple and red and continue. So it's really up to you what to do with it. Like I said, try not to be too over the top. But you can, right? I mean, you could be making some, I don't know, like Christmas ornament or something that has these like blinky colors and whatnot. It could be appropriate. But what I'm just trying to tell you is, imagine doing that in Photoshop, right? You're going to make, actually, how many of you use Photoshop? Okay, how many of you are good at Photoshop? All right, so for you guys, it's actually easier to do in Photoshop, probably. But for me, every time I open Photoshop, I want to hit my head against the wall, which I'm not sure why I'm giving a session right after this one, but we'll see. So, but like if you're doing it in, say, Photoshop, then every time you change your text, if you do internationalization, you have to keep making a new image, right? Or if all you want to do is make it have a nice gradient. So in this case, you're doing it programmatically. You can swap it in Chinese. It will still shade beautifully. And then custom font. Again, I'm choosing things that's over the top to illustrate. That's yet another thing that will make your app stand out. Like, well, of course you have to theme it in. So I have this app that is called Monkey Write for teaching people how to write Chinese. It's mostly for children. So I put in a nice bulky font to theme it in, right, so that it looks nice. So if you have a monkey and then you have Times New Roman, it's kind of odd, right? So how do you actually load your custom font? This time, instead of in the res folder, we're actually putting the font into the asset folder. And what you need to do is then load it up into a typeface, and then simply set the typeface. It's fairly straightforward.
Okay, there's no way to set fonts in XML files?
Not that I know of.
So for every single text, hundreds of text views in your project, you've got to go.
Aha, you are around 10 slides ahead of me.
Okay.
The nice way to do this is by custom view. I'm going to show you in around 10 slides how to do it. But first, what I find really nice is that I'm actually borrowing this concept from like the web world, like using icon fonts. Have you guys heard of that? So what you can do in CSS essentially is you apply a font to your text. But the font, instead of showing like a really cursive C, for example, is actually showing you a cup of coffee. So then, because it's, well, all fonts are vector data in case people don't have that registered in their head. So it's a vector format. And you can just specify in CSS, for example, that I want the letter C to be 300 pixels big, but it's actually drawing a coffee cup. So then that way you get your assets, your images in scalable format. So I borrowed the concept and put it into Android. So for example, I found this beautiful joy figurine in a font. So that is not an image view. That is a text view. And what I did was, okay, this is going to be of this size, and I'm going to use the letter A. And instead of having a letter A, it ended up showing me Android because I'm loading a specific font that, in that particular font, letter A corresponds to the Android figurine. And this is the slide that you were looking for. So this is a custom view. What it does is it extends a text view. So it takes all the parameters that it normally takes, like the Android code and text. But what happens is in the constructor, it will go ahead and change the typeface into the font that you wanted. And then you can stuff in any other logic you want. So in my case, I'm also changing it so that it's doing a gradient. which the end result is that, for example, I can have as many Androids as I want, as many sizes as I want, and they will all have this beautiful, well, subtle, I hope, gradient from a light green to a dark green. And all I need to do is specify in the XML file, no, not that slide yet, not the chat yet. In the XML file, all I need to do is to spell out that I'm using, instead of text view, icon text view, right? And then I can give it the size I want, and then you can have the same, in the same font, have multiple different icons. So to choose, you can use the same icon text view, and to choose different icons, you can just say, oh, this is the letter A, and A is for Android, and B is for Bob, I guess, and you have a Bob on it. So in this way, you don't have to every time fetch a text view and in your activity or wherever, oh, okay, I'm going to load this font from assets and then set the typeface. So you just need to refer to the icon text view. Okay, I think you guys are very looking forward to the cat slide. Why do I have a cat slide? So this, actually I lied in the beginning. I said there's a first part, which is the lecture part. The second part is the hands-on workshop. The lecture part is actually into two parts. So the first part, I tell you how to integrate these things into Android. And the second part, I'm going to show you my favorite websites to get fonts, logos, SVGs, and whatnot. And this is just my translation slide. You can stretch. And if people want cookies, can come get cookies. And or people who answered questions. Okay, I'm going to go around for people who answered questions. I think we have someone here who will explain the debate here.
We have a box of cookies.
No, stretch. Do like the text. Alright. So now this is the part where I'm going to be actually switching back and forth from my presentation to the web a lot, and feel free to play with it on your own computer, because a large part of the fun of the website is that, oh my god, there are so many different things you can do with them. I'm going to show you, well, it's all nice to be able to do gradients, but how do I pick colors that are not obnoxious? Also where to find fonts, and if I want pattern for my background, besides making like my own, like you can download them from the web as well, and also graphics for your icons. This is a fairly simple site for color variations, 02255.com, and let's see if I can click on this and it will load. All right. So the way that you work is that you pick a color. I don't suppose anyone knows their favorite color in hex, right? Okay, I am scary like that. Voila. So we have purple here, and what I did was I supplied one single hex value to it, and so this is the one. This is your starting value, and then it's going to give you variations on essentially from like light to dark, right? So then you can use it in, for example, the gradients that I showed you earlier. And again, this is a very simple one-purpose site, but very useful. And if you want something a little bit fancier, there's another one that actually gives you a color scheme. So in this case, I gave it the ice cream sandwich blue, essentially. And then I asked it to give me a complementary color as well. So you can imagine having this as maybe blue as your primary color, and then your action item buttons are in orange. So because if you give it to me, I'm going to make the app look like a Christmas tree with red and green. I don't know anything about color scheme, color theory, or anything like that. So this website encapsulates all that into a nice interface. So this is mono. On mono, it kind of looks like the other website, but then it still looks like Christmas. Huh? So let's change a little bit. So you have this wheel where you can go ahead and play and find the color scheme you like. So maybe a little bit more like that. And then it has even more different modes you can use. But for me, it's very nice because I don't know anything about colors. And using this, I was actually able to create decent-looking icons by just mixing and matching shapes and color. Actually, have people used these things before? I mean, when I discovered them, it's like Christmas. Oh my God, there's all these lovely things. And by the second part, when we're doing the actual hands-on, like I would love to just like do a little show and tell. People want to also come up and share their favorite website. So I'm going to show you all mine, and then and then we'll see. So those are the two that I use for picking colors. And then for fonts, there's this website called Font Squirrel. What's nice about it is that you can ask for different, you can just unzip at the top level, and it actually knows that, you know, red slash, drawable dash, HDPI and whatnot, so we'll just dump things in the right place, yes?
I was just going to say, I think this is probably useful if you use other IDEs, so not everybody is an Eclipse fan, like I am. But, you know,
Right.
A lot of my team members like IntelliJ, and I don't know if this would be available in IntelliJ.
Good point. So yeah, here you can just use it from the web. So you're not tied to a particular IDE. And another set that I really like is called Glyphish icons. I mean, there's a lot of icon sets out there. Just showing you this particular one. Again, so this one is a little bit, well, it's not as nice as the other one because you cannot really configure and make it green or anything like that, but the icon is really high quality. And later I have a slide that has a link to way more, like it's a wiki of resources that you have other as well. But I just want to show you that there are a lot of icons available out there that you can download. And if not, there is the Noun project. Who knows about the Noun project? All right, you need to give this talk next year because you know a lot of these stuff. I love the Noun project, and show again is better than tell. So what is it? It's a repository of SVG files. And the great thing about SVG files is they are vectors. So they are scalable. So you can use them in many different ways. So I'm going to search for piggy bank. Because it's kind of specific if you need a piggy bank in your app. And look, there's a piggy bank. Yeah, I searched this before, I can't cheat it. So then you can download, not only there's one piggy bank, there are multiple piggy banks. So this one is Creative Commons. Can you see the attribute lines that are kind of faint in the bottom, like here? So these are of various licenses, so again, pay attention. This is Creative Commons, this is also Creative Commons. So you can pick the one you want, and if you want to use it and you don't want to give them credit, you can also just buy it. So this is great. And if you want, we can search for something that I did not prepare before and see what it comes up with. What should we search for?
Skate.
What?
Skates.
Skates?
Is it like roller skates?
Skate.
Yeah.
Like skates. Park, skateboarding maybe?
Skateboard,
Let's see
sure.
how that looks like. I'll press enter instead. Hey, not bad. I mean, it's not this actual scale. I think you're probably thinking about the actual. Oh, hey, we have the skateboard, not the.
Right. Ranger Station? Ranger Station?
Ranger Station. Oh, we're getting specific here. Oh, look. It can also complete Ranger Station. Somebody thought you would need a Ranger Station. Look at that one. Yes, we have two. We have two Ranger Stations. We have one with Ranger and one without Ranger. And they're both public domain, I believe. There you go. Right, so this is great. And if you are a designer, feel free to contribute because I can't contribute. I'm just a consumer. What you can do, though, with these SVG files is that this is what I do. I'm a geek. I use the command line. Maybe you guys use ImageMagick as well. It's basically an image manipulation tool without the UI. It uses the command line tool. You can do cropping, resizing, and whatnot. In this case, I'm merely changing the format from SVG to PNG. It detects the format of the file just by the extension. So I give it cat.svg and I ask it to output as cat.png, so it knows that if I want it to output PNG. And these parameters, all I'm saying is just trim, get rid of all the white spaces in the corner, I don't want it. Background none, give me a background that is transparent. So say I'm using a cat on a button that is gray, then I don't have like a white background or anything. And density is actually, you're doing scaling. Depending on the SVG, usually it's maybe like 200 by 200 pixels, something of that kind. So if you want it bigger or smaller, you can use the 100%, 500% to scale the image. So once you have it as a PNG file, then you can use it normally in your Android project, or you can import it into Photoshop and do stuff with it. Or I guess if you are good, you will use Illustrator or Inkscape, and you will also do other things to it. But be careful of the licensing again, right? So ImageMagick to the library, the command line is called convert. And OpenClipper is another repository of SVG data. The difference between that and the Noun project is that the Noun project is for icons. The OpenClipper has a lot more other things. So for cat, I have this yellow, I don't know, male-looking cat, but it's different, right? It's not necessarily in a square format. So that again will give you an SVG that you can use the same trick. And now we have a mashup of two things. So icon moon is just like Fontella I showed you earlier, which you can specify some icon font. But the cool thing about this is that you can upload your own SVG to make your own icon. So, for example, what I did was I went to the Noun project, I downloaded a teapot in SVG, save it to my local disk, upload it back to the site, and then I make my own custom font set that contain the icons I need. So I have tea, I have water, and I have a camera icon. Again, same deal. Once you have done that, then you can assign codes to them, and then you can use it in your icon view, icon text view. And this is the mother of all resources. My friend Kevin made it. It's awesome. It has not only all these icons and whatnot, it shows you like different Android libraries you can use. I just have to show you like the full list is amazing. Well, it looks boring, but it's amazing. Let's wait for it to load. Come on, Internet. I just said you're amazing. Be amazing. All right, cool. So it has a lot of resources. So just general app development. So design pattern is basically you're out of inspiration from, how am I going to make a list of images? Then you can go through and see how other apps do. For example, I can just click through and show you quickly. Maybe slowly, if it loads. Right, so for example, it will give you, how would I make a compile screen? Then you can go ahead and click it and it shows you example, what apps does. Yeah, there are other OSs here, not just our favorite, but hey, like I said, I get ideas not just from Android, I get it from the web. A lot of these things are translatable cross-platform. So the part that I was showing you is the icon part will be the relevant part, right? Glyphish, I already showed you a screenshot of the icons available. The Noun project, there are other things that is either you can download or you can do what the Noun project style, where you can search. So like icon is a zip file essentially of usually PNG file. Sometimes they give you the PSD file so that you can actually manipulate it in Photoshop. But yeah, there are other ones that's just a directory, and you can pick and choose the ones you want. And we have, again, the subtle patterns, fonts, all kinds of other things. It even show bug reporting, load testing, everything. So check out this website if you need more resources. And with that, the first part is over. And like I promised earlier, there is a bit.ly link that you can get all these slides. And here's my blog and Twitter. The second link is a mailing list. I haven't sent anything to it yet, but I am thinking about writing an Android book. So I may send announcements there. And yeah, since I have white space, I decided to plug my Monkey Write app. It has nothing to do with, well, it has something to do with this talk because I did use gradients for the buttons and whatnot in that app, but only marginally. I mostly just want some audio numbers. So, any questions? Yes?
Actually, I just have a correction to your iComoon slide.
Yeah?
It says iComoon.com, but that's like some random parking domain.
Oh.
But it should be
.co?
iComoon.io.
IO.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. I will correct that. Well, that's the beauty of it. This deck is actually just an HTML5 deck. So I'm going to update it, and then the same URL will get you to the updated version. Thank you. You get a cookie. Anyone else want a cookie? All right.
So have you been able to use some of these techniques and put them into a theme, or?
Theme in terms of like the Android theme?
Yeah, Android theme.
Well, in my mind, Android themes are just shortcuts, right? I mean, essentially, you're just saying that, for buttons, for example, I'm going to have a theme, for a style for button and everything themed. I have not done that. Not because I can't, just because I've been building it up piece by piece. I just never went through the step of extracting that into a theme. But are you thinking of a theme so that you can reuse it in different projects? Yeah, I don't see why not, but yeah, should be able to do that.
And have you used custom fonts other than to do these fun icons? Have you used custom fonts for actual text?
Yeah, I have.
And do you advise that, or?
I think it really, the whole design principle is everything has to fit together, right? So if you download Monkey, right, you will see that, like I mentioned earlier, I use a kind of cute, round, bold font all over the app, and I actually apply gradient onto it as well. And I think it themes into the app pretty well instead of the more slender, mechanical roboto font. It makes the app more fun. I mean, I can't really categorically give advice like always use custom font or never use custom font, but I will give the guideline like just think of what you're trying to achieve. Like don't use custom font because you can, right? I mean, don't pile all this technique into your app because you just learned them. This is more like a toolbox. But yeah, I mean, I think when used correctly, custom font actually adds a lot to the look and feel of your app. So, yes.
My experience is that when you use gradient, they don't look very good on cheap phones.
Oh.
So do you have any experience on that, or?
I actually have experience with that, not necessarily cheap phone, but I was using gradient as a PNG, not as like the programmatic one. So for the Monkey Write app, like I have like a really beautiful bamboo background that I use for tablets essentially. So I loaded it up on a 10-inch tablet, and it looks horrendous. It just looks horrendous, and because of the gradient, it's banded. Like instead of like a smooth gradient, I see like bands of like light green, slightly darker green, even more, and it just looks really stupid. So what I did was I went back to the Photoshop, I cut out the layer that is the gradient, so it has a transparent background, and then I layer a gradient that I specified by code, and I also had to do some trick before actually doing the set content view. I have to set some mode, some window mode, so that the dithering is done properly, and then it worked. So it had basically some problem interpreting the PNG file. I mean, again, maybe just my lack of Photoshop skills. Maybe I'm not setting the correct flag when I export the file. But I have seen god ugly gradients, and I'm hoping that the programmatic technique will take care of most of the cases, because, like I said, what happens is that you interpret your PNG, right, and then you try to stretch over like so that your whole screen is filled with the same gradient. So that's my experience.
Now, what do you call a cheap phone? Can you give an example of?
Mostly, I remember one case was a Motorola, maybe the first Droid or the second Droid.
All right. So I think I vastly underestimated my talk speed, because I actually have until 3:45 for the first half, and I think people probably will be leaving for the second half. So if you don't mind, are people brave enough to come and do show and tell with their favorite website? Because I want to see more than what I've shown for like the NAM project and things like that. I'm looking at you. I'm going to go deliver a round of cookies and let's see. Yeah. Oh, people didn't know how they look like. Oh, hold on. That needs to be shown.
I don't know how long it will
Alright, all right, fine. You can get cookies even if you did not ask questions. Just get cookies. All right, just pass it on.
How does it look?
Wait, but then no one will come to do the show and tell.
I have a
Those are
question,
my
actually. So
incentives.
when doing this, and I wonder if he has to do kind of like what you're saying with his issue that he had. I mean, when you're using gradients, obviously, when you use procedural, then it's just vector graphics, so there's no rasterizing, there's no pixel problems. But the issue when you see usually the banding is when you have, you're doing a gradient, obviously, there's not that information. I mean, it's a PNG, it's an actual image. So you're actually dealing with pixel information. So if those pixels are big, that means like, which maybe is what you meant by.
So they're kind of
Exactly.
extrapolating from limited data.
Then, what you have is you have red who's going to start changing values all the way, till it gets, in your case, to purple,
Right.
and then you start changing values. When you crunch that information, you have the tiny pixels, you see a pure gradient. But when you have the bigger pixels, then you're going to see the banding. So my question is, when you...
Are you big pixels meaning on cheap phones? Like what does big pixel mean?
Yeah, big pixels use me low res.
Pixel it's just pixel information, right?
So it's not as dense.
dense.
Okay.
Exactly,
Yeah.
dense on the screen.
Okay.
So when you post it, is there a compression that happens on build usually? Because that's another reason why. I come from game development, so I'm.
Oh, we're out of cookies. No.
Game engines, right? And so.
Save some for tomorrow, though. I have another talk, so that's two stacks. Eat just one.
So my question is, does the system actually have built-in compression, so that based on the phone, the system will actually, compress the image differently?
I don't think that's system specific because I think the compression happens on compile time when you build your APK.
So it depends on what IDE you're using and how you're.
I assume it's actually just an Android 2 chain. I don't think people who use IntelliJ can tell me.
Okay, actually, if you try custom ROMs, that's one of the optimizations they do. And I think they may have introduced it recently, but they talk about de-odexing or odex, recompressing all the files to make it load faster initially.
Right.
So I don't know. So we have some optimizations like that. And so some people who want to save battery life or they want a faster phone, they really tweak it and redo everything, like all the apps, they redo all the graphics, and they work on it as well.
So at that point, there might be a compression that is not actually keeping the truth.
I don't really know the details, but I know that some people take the time and they go through every little APK that it's a minute optimization that people don't care about, but some people really care, and so they're redoing and they publish the ROM and you can
Imagine a lot of people don't include an LDPI version. The XHDPI, the HDPI, the MDPI.
Oh yes. So
LDPI.
So yes, it will scale it automatically.
People may not include that, and
So
if
that
you
it
include it,
scales
you
it.
may get around that problem.
Gotcha.
So
the system is scaling for you.
That could be why you're getting the banding.
So you want to get the math correct in a way. So, one thing that they do with screens, they make sure that the screens are divisible by 4.
Actually, I need it back for tomorrow. Don't eat all of them.
So the width has to be divisible by all the screens of any phone. The width is divisible by 4, and the height is divisible by 4. If you look at the icons of also the recommended guidelines, there is some kind of logic of kind of the icon size they have. They try to keep within those guidelines, because if you keep on dividing by 2, for some reason you want to make it smaller, you don't want to.
You always want to do it yourself if you can provide it. So, like you're saying, to share, one of the things is that when you're actually, say even if you have Photoshop, right, then you want to provide your own files for those things, and then what you want to do, what I find out in my experience, is that you want to actually change that size, and when you compress it, don't use the default, because what's going to happen is any gradient that you have, then what it's going to do is it's going to try to guesstimate what the change between this value and that value is, so you're going to get a banding. So it's always better to, when you do an image size and you make it smaller, you change the automatic setting to be smooth, to actually make it by cubic sharp, and that'll get around that issue.
Landscope filter is a good one for downsampling.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering right.
And you want to strip out the metadata.
Is there any disadvantage? Is there any disadvantage to what I saw you do with the round corner gradient to make a button versus what Google seems to have done with the hollow theme? They had like a gazillion images, probably 5 or 6 megabytes worth of different buttons. Is there any disadvantages to not using
I'm just lazy,
and using that instead?
Right? But there are limitations on using the XML, right? So the difference between XML and, for example, 9-patch is that, for example, I cannot make like a Google Maps style bubble just by XML. Right, that you have to use line patch, because what it does, it tells you the borders don't stretch, but like in the middle stretch. So you can make like a nice fancy background and then still be able to adapt to the size of your views. So a lot of those assets is because they have things of that nature, which you cannot programmatically specify. You have to actually give them, all right, so in this corner, this is the pixel style I want. So that is the limitation. I mean, I have also seen assets that is essentially just a gradient, and they like the old list selector. I don't know, like the orange one. I don't know if you people remember. Like that is a line patch. Well, I don't know why. It's just an orange gradient, but that's what they were using. But yeah, my preference is to avoid PNG as much as possible, just because I'm not comfortable with manipulating them. But your preference may be different. So I'm very happy that there are ways to do without. Okay, oops. All right. So the next session starts at 4 o'clock. Actually, so I have a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is like we can have a break until 4 o'clock. But what I want is people to actually move. So when I come back, I want people to sit alternating, people with Photoshop and without Photoshop on the computer, so that when we do the hands-on part, at least you can see what's going on. You can chime in and figure out. So there will be movement. So don't get too tied down to your seat. All right. So see you back at 4 o'clock.